Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is Psychic Medium Raymond Guzman, and today I'm going to be talking about paranormal discussions, and I'm going to be discussing organ transplants and how that is tied into our soul. So for those of you that are listening right now, what prompted this discussion, which is something a little bit different, it's not going to be a psychic reading that I'm doing today, but it was prompted by the fact that I started watching this new show on Netflix called Chambers. And in this show, if you have not seen it, I'm not going to give you too much details, but I want you to see it. It's about a girl who, starts having some problems with her heart, and she's in need in order to live, of a heart transplant. And so another girl about her age that passes, the family decides to be, I guess, give her heart to this girl, and the girl starts having some paranormal experiences. So that's all I'm gonna say. Now, when you if for those of you that are tuning in, if you've looked at or you've seen The Eye, it was a movie that came out in sometime in the 2000s, and it was by Jessica Alba was the main actress in the movie. Now, Jessica Alba received corneal transplants in her eyes from another girl that lived in Mexico, I believe. And once she received that transplant in her eyes, she was able to see again, but at the same time, she started seeing things that were not in your peripheral vision, like, in physical reality. These were on the spiritual level. She started seeing visions of things, that were going on, that were happening all around her, that the girl that died used to see. And she would see, it's like she was looking through that girl's eyes, and she was becoming haunted by that. So the question, I guess, that a lot of people would be tuning in today would be, do you believe that when we die, and if we are an organ donor and someone gets a piece of one of our organs, is there a possibility that the soul of that person that has died stays here earthbound, or stays connected to that other person that is now has had the transplant, the organ transplant? Again, I feel like, from my perspective, from spirit, because when we die, our human body is a vessel that holds a soul. It's like our vehicle. But when we die, it no longer has any physical attachment to that body. So when people are cremated, the soul doesn't feel that. However, usually when people are cremated, in most cases, if they're not an organ donor, everything in that everything is cremated, heart, all the organs. But the question here would be, if that person was to have a transplant, an organ transplant, and that person that gives them their organs, would they stay kind of attached or haunting? Could they possibly haunt this person, that is still living? So let's go ahead and take a look here. I'm going to be discussing today. I'm going to give you about 10 different scenarios from 10 organ recipients who took on the traits of their donors. And this was on Listverse. So, let me go ahead and get into the first one. Now, the first one is this case of Claire Sylvia has strange cravings and dreams, and she's from New England. So, not only did the heart and lung transplant that the 47-year-old Claire Sylvia received save her life, but it also made her the first person in New England to undergo the process. She's also convinced that in addition to vital organs, she received some of her donor's taste, as if memories were locked into the heart and lungs and consequently are now flowing in her body. She told a reporter that when she was asked what she wanted to do first after the operation, she said that she was dying to have a beer. Now, this was strange because Claire, as she never enjoyed beer in the slightest before, over the coming days, she found that she was experiencing cravings for foods that she'd never liked or had eaten before, such as green peppers, Snicker chocolate bars, and strangely, McDonald's chicken McNuggets, something which she had never had the desire to eat. See, she also began to experience strange dreams. She would see a thin young man who she believed was called Tim. Specifically, he had the words Tim L in her mind, and she had the dreams. By searching through local obituaries of the days leading up to the day of her transplant, she came across Timothy Lamarand. Now, Lamarand was 18 years old when he died in a motorcycle accident on the same day Claire's transplant. He had been on his way home from a local McDonald's restaurant. A bag of chicken McNuggets was found in his jacket pocket when doctors removed his clothing in a desperate attempt to save his life. She managed to track down Tim's family, whom she had not met before, and they confirmed to her that the cravings she was having were indeed all four foods that Tim had enjoyed very much, beer and all. She has remained in touch with Tim's family ever since. So that is really spine tingling. It's very, very, just odd, and it makes you think, could our souls still be tied? Because the organs, when we die, I believe that the soul has imprinted energy in the organs. And so if that organ is still beating and still alive, it's like an essence or part of that soul that has left that body is still attached to that organ, entirely, because there's still like a breath of life, or there's still some kind of, attachment to that organ. Now, here's another case. This is from Jamie Sherman, and she awakes from a transplant feeling rage and anger in Tucson, Arizona. Now, Jamie Sherman had underwent several heart surgeries by the time she had a heart transplant at the age of 24. She suffered from a heart defect since birth. When she awoke following the successful procedure, she felt a deep sense of anger, and so much that she wanted to fight, although she didn't know why. She also began to have cravings for Mexican food, especially cheese enchiladas, something that she hadn't craved before. 6 months following the transplant, Jamie was able to meet the family of her donor, a 29-year-old man named Scott Phillips. She quickly mentioned her cravings and liking for Mexican foods, and she wasn't too surprised to hear that Scott's favorite food was Mexican, and he particularly liked cheese enchiladas. Now, when Jamie found out that Scott had died in a fight at a sports bar after being hit in the head and suffering major brain trauma, she felt that now she understood where her certain feelings of anger came from. She theorized that he felt anger and rage in the seconds before he was hit and consequently died, and these feelings were locked in his heart when it was transplanted to her. Again, confirming what I have said, that there is some kind of energetic attachment when a person dies, and let's say they are an organ an organ donor. There is going to be some kind of energetic attachment. Now let's look at one of these other cases here. Okay, this case is William Sheridan becomes an art genius in New York. Now, William Sheridan turned to drawing as a hobby to take his mind off of waiting for a heart donor to become available. Truth be told, he wasn't very good. However, one of the first things he noticed following his surgery in 2006 was that all of a sudden his talent for art had seemingly improved tenfold. After agreeing to meet the family of the man who had donated the heart, originally as part of the campaign to awareness for the need of donors, he discovered that the man, 24-year-old Keith Neville, had been a very enthusiastic artist, and he was very good too. In addition to the art skills, William felt he had genuinely become more caring and loving, which he attributed to Keith. Now, his case is just one of several that have been studied by Professor Gary Schwartz of the University of Arizona. And according to Gary, more and more evidence is being found that strongly suggests that organs retain cellular memories, and that every organ in the body appears to do so. So again, now from a scientific perspective, we are talking about cellular memories, but in the spiritual world, this would translate to spiritual energy that from a soul, and a part of that soul still living on. So it's almost like a dissected soul. Part of the soul is living in spirit, and part of it may be living here, with this person that's still walking around with that person's organ until that person that is walking around, eventually dies or passes on. And then you could say that all that energy is severed, that attachment is severed. It also leads me to believe, to make that other question, that that person may be forever tied to another person forever. That's right. I feel like it could possibly be that when we die, if we are an organ donor and we donate one of our organs, that we would be tied in spirit to that other person forever in the afterlife. Like there would be a bond of some sort that could not be broken. Again, because again, there's no such thing as coincidences. So when a person passes, and you have an organ donor and there's compatibility, for that organ, and it's a perfect match, you have to kind of think that this is divinely orchestrated in many, many ways. And so there's a reason that this happened. Either, this was like a person that used to be a spiritual soul family to you, but now in this present, tense, we no longer have recollection of that. But again, it's very interesting when we get into the topic of that. Now, I'm going to read you one more, and this is a very shocking one. David Waters develops random craving for burger rings, and he was from New South Wales, Australia. Now, David Waters, age 24, was suffering from stiffening of the heart ventricles and had only months to live when he finally received a new heart in 2006. It came courtesy of a 17-year-old Caden Delaney, who had been left on life support following a car accident. He didn't recover, and in accordance with his wishes, his parents, Greg and Shelley Delaney, gave permission for this organs to be donated. Now, Greg and Shelley spent the following 2 years trying to make contact with the people who had received his organs. When they finally managed to speak with David, they discovered quite an interesting development. For no reason that David could understand, since the operation had saved his life, he had developed an intense liking for the corn-based snack burger rings. He told Caden's parents that it was the only thing he wanted to eat after his surgery. His parents informed him that their son had in fact loved burger rings, which were one of his favorite snacks. Now, David believes he gained this particular liking up from Caden, and as he didn't have any desire to eat them before the transplant. So, when we look at science and we look at the medical field, I don't feel like, a lot of the medical field would, jump on the bandwagon and say that this is possible. But I do, from a spiritual perspective. And I feel like, if you are an organ donor, it's a possibility that when you pass and you were to give your organ to somebody else, that you will stay bound or attached to the person. I'm not an organ donor, and I know that some people that would be listening would say, well, maybe that's a little selfish, but I feel like that was not my path to, when my time would come to transition. I don't feel like that would be my path. But for many of these people that are, from a young age, like this guy, who wanted to be an organ donor, I do feel like there is a reason that their soul knows when they're coming to earth that they are going to be organ donors. And there is a specific reason, everything is pre-written. Like there's certain things that are pre-written, and I feel like that are in a soul contract or blueprint that we cannot change. And these would be like exit points, and also if you're an organ donor, who is going to receive your organ. Now, the message behind this is not to create fear or to make you scared, but it's just to kind of, make you think about what happens after we die and people that receive our organs. And I'm not sponsored by Netflix or, these movies or this show, but I really, really encourage you to kind of see, even if you're a sensitive or an empath. So far, I haven't finished Chambers, but I'm like on episode 4, and it's so intriguing. It had me hooked, and I feel like it'll hook you immediately if you pay attention to it. So I definitely recommend you checking it out. I'm gonna finish that, and I hope there's more seasons to it. Because this is season 1 that I'm seeing right now. And if you have not seen The Eye by Jessica Alba, I would also recommend for you to see that, because that movie will kind of explain a lot of what I've just read to you, and what I've talked about and discussed right now in this podcast about organ transplants. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you did like this video, please, 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 guys and gals, give it a thumbs up. And the reason that I say that is because when you give the video a thumbs up, the more people that do that, it kind of helps the video get to where other people can be, it can be recommended to other people that are in the spiritual community or that like certain videos like this. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And if you'd like to book a private psychic reading with me, you can visit my website at www.raymondguzman.net/shop. Blessings and love and light. Have an amazing day or night wherever you are in the world.